warranty. Sandy would like a little clarification. I know in regards to Premier, it says just a general warranty, and that's for clarification there. I think in regard to ES&S, a little clarification as to goodness for this purpose. They don't do that in the proposal, but they indicate it.
ES&S disputed my summary of process with respect to the EAC. The other vendors, I think, confirmed I was correct. ES&S raised a question about that, so I'd like ES&S to take their position on that issue.
Thank you. And Hardinger Civic, too, if the staff would just follow up to clarify any warranty language there, what their exact position is in that regard.
And then I'd ask Carter for information on actual election day turnout in Tarrant, Texas, Hawaii, and county they had experience with.
Okay, so staff would do that. Here's what I'd like to do now. We're not concluded. We have some public comment on this. We do have one agenda item that has been added on in regards to provisional ballots. We've had the benefit of also receiving a law memorandum from Reno in regards to how to handle some of these. There are two real items here. I'm going to suggest, if it's okay with the board, we address these under resolution that would permit staff to do something with these ballots for our next meeting, which is next Tuesday, and then we can kind of wind up our public presentation. I don't know that it will take a whole lot of time in regards to this. That item relates to an update on the provisional votes for the March 4th, 2008 presidential primary election. And our first one deals with the Dixie issue, where voters may have been found to be registered in other counties, and therefore their ballots have not been counted. So if you have someone on staff that wants to address that, Jane? No, Betty.
Good afternoon. Betty Grant Edwards, Assistant Manager, Registration Department. I think all of the board members have a copy of the spreadsheet that identifies the 28 individuals as well as information surrounding these cases. There were a total of 2,210 provisional ballots that were counted because the voters were canceled in our registration system. Therefore, they were not registered. Of these 2,210 individuals that were not registered voters, there were mailed a letter from the CBS division informing them that their ballots were not counted because they were not registered. Therefore, they were not contacted our office. Of the 2,210, only 28 voters contacted our office. They either contacted us in person, via telephone, and two of the individuals contacted one of our board members. Of the 28 records, all of them were reviewed.
All of them were what, Betty?
All of them were reviewed. My staff contacted the county that they were also registered in at the same time. We talked to the individuals. We went into the Dixie system, which is the interface system with the state system, and we also went into the Secretary of State's voter registration system. All of this information is available for review by the board. These individuals' records had been canceled because of a transaction log of duplicate resolution in process merged with another record. Based upon this information, the registration department would like to recommend to the board that these 28 ballots that were initially rejected, that they be counted. We would also like for the board to approve sending a letter of apology to each of these 28 individuals and inform them that their ballots will be counted. We also would like to notify Robin Fields in the Secretary of State's office so that she can remove the canceled, not registered status and make these voters active.
Thank you. in regards to Betty, it was determined that each voter had an active registration in Cuyahoga County, and some had maintained a voting history for more than a decade. I mean, how does that happen? Is this a software issue? Or is it
It's not a software issue. What happens is that, well, we can talk about the case of Mrs. Littlejohn, who came to the last board meeting. Mrs. Littlejohn received a letter. She came to the board meeting. When I took her back to the registration office, we sat down, and I found out that she was registered in Portage County in 1998. She moved to Cuyahoga County in 1999. She registered in Cuyahoga County in 1999, and from 1999 until this election, she and her husband have never missed voting. I then called Portage County. They had her as inactive because she hadn't been voting there, but she was still on their records.
But she received a notice from us, why?
She received a notice because her provisional ballot that she cast said that she was not registered.
And she received a provisional ballot because when she went to vote in her poll book, it said canceled.
Correct. No, she wasn't even in the poll.
She wasn't in. But somebody's responsible. Someone made a decision based on information.
And we're not.
Excuse me, get to the essence of what the problem is, so I can understand.
We don't really know who was at fault. We don't know if it was our county, Cuyahoga, or another county.
Well, why did we not, someone decided not to put her in the vote, right?
Because she showed up as being canceled.
So someone looked at that and said canceled,
Correct.
right? And did they just assume that she should even, why was that notice of cancel placed there? Was it a software issue that put it there?
If I might
Yes.
help out a little bit. This is a issue with the Dixie system whereby we communicate with the state of Ohio on folks that move in and out of the county, and every other county in the state communicates through that Dixie system. The Dixie system has had significant problems. It was not being utilized by Cuyahoga County for a long period of time. I don't know what other counties did or didn't, how they used or didn't use it, but now we went back and started reconciling these duplicate records after a period of time of not using the system because it wasn't working. And when we started to reconcile them, some folks who had moved to Summit County had already moved back into Cuyahoga County, and those events did not catch up with us until we removed them. So there's this history of problems with the system. Other counties are having the same issues. Cuyahoga County is not the only county experiencing this fallout as a result of the March election. It's the system.
And our staff here has been in constant communication with them to try and improve.
Sorry, what's the system? Is it the Dixie
The
system?
Dixie
Dixie
system,
system.
correct.
So it's the Secretary of State's responsibility, that's who's causing this problem. I mean, I really want to identify.
It is the DIMS system from Premier Election Systems that we have problems with. And it's a multiply-pronged communication system between the state, the county, and DIMS.
How do we address it?
We've been attempting to address it with the vendor for a very long period of time. As late as yesterday, we had significant communications going back and forth on duplicates, and we have been unable to resolve it with the vendor.
Because, I mean, and I don't mean that because of this problem, people's votes aren't being counted. And fortunately, because of your
Correct.
staff's diligence, we've identified 28 people whose votes should be counted.
Correct.
I'm betting a house to a hutch that there are other votes that aren't being counted because they didn't respond or they didn't want to get back. And that's not their fault, that's our fault as public officials, and that's why I guess I'm pushing this and wondering how hard we're pushing on it to resolve the problem.
We've been pushing Mr. Chen from DIMS, Mr. Morosky from DIMS, and we've been pushing hard, and we've been unable to resolve it. And again, it's not just a Cuyahoga County problem, is my understanding.
We've also talked to the Secretary of State, and she was informed of this, and she has put her IT person on this to assist us with this issue.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate your patience with me in that regard. Thank you. I'm going to move to accept the recommendations of staff as it relates to these 28 provisional ballots. I'm confident that these individuals did vote and should be counted. There's a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Cole, is there any further discussion or comment?
Yes.
Please.
Betty,
Yes.
the second sentence says, each of the not registered voters was mailed a letter. I missed it. How many
I'm
letters?
sorry?
How many letters did we send?
2,210. And we're the only county in Ohio that's sending out letters to provisional voters whose ballots were rejected.
Would you just get a copy of that letter that we sent to all the board members, please? Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It passes. We're on to the next item of business, which deals with, again, provisional ballots, but in a little different scenario. We discussed this at our last meeting, and it is, the staff has looked at it and made some recommendations as it relates to this. However, as late as yesterday afternoon, we received a legal opinion from Reno. I think recommending his recommendation out of Hamlet, which differs from our staff's recommendation. I guess I'd like to hear from you, Mr. Ordini. I think the board is familiar with the problem. What we had as individuals here, I think without exception, that signed a poll book, but were told to go somewhere else to vote in a new location, which they did, but they cast that vote provisionally, and the issue becomes whether that provisional ballot should be cast in light of the fact that they may have signed a poll book somewhere else, and I think all of them represented that they never cast a ballot at the place where they signed the poll book. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Ordini.
Yesterday afternoon, I talked with Mike DeFranco, and we went over the facts and the law. I believe that we are in agreement on the recommendation.
Mr. DeFranco?
I agree with Mr. Ordini. I believe we should count all the ballots.
Did I make a fair representation of
Yes.
what the
Yes,
issue
you
was
did.
for you and the staff?
Yes, these folks voted, signed the poll book in their old voting location, and then were told to go to their new voting location where they voted a provisional ballot.
And we've interfaced with them and got assurances, and they were represented to us at least, that they didn't.
Yes, they stated to me that they did not vote in their original precinct, and they just voted the provisional ballot. I know in the last board meeting, Board Member Frost requested that I attach certificate number 1s to these. However, I don't believe you're able to justify one way or the other with the certificate number 1s if there was an extra ballot voted in those precincts in question.
And then a deciding factor is when they signed their change of residence provisional ballot, there's a falsifications statement that they signed in there. I believe that was the deciding factor there.
Yes.
So
The
I thought Mr.
affirmation
DeFranco would
statement.
agree with me.
I'm sorry, who didn't agree with you?
No, that changes recommendation when I explained to him that there was a
Yeah, on my
falsification.
original recommendation, I suggested I recommended we do not count these, but in light of what happened last night with Mr. Ordini's information, I think we should.
So your recommendation has changed to
Yes.
count all those votes?
Correct.
Thank
And
you.
the last one on here, number 51, is the one that I failed to supply the poll book page for the one voter signature, and that is now on. If you look at number 51, Willie Richardson. The son signed in the father's signature box on the poll book. It would be the last signature on the first page and the first signature on the second poll book page, page 11 and 12. So that ballot too should also be counted. So all 9 of these ballots in question, we recommend you count.
I'm going to move to accept the recommendations of staff in regards to these ballots, if there's a second.
Second.
There's a further discussion or questions from the board.
Further discussion.
Please.
I had expressed my concerns before last time. One is I put great weight in the recommendations of our staff, which I did then and I do again today. I want to thank our staff for going back and our legal counsel, which also I put great weight in. And I thank our legal counsel for not only answering the question that was raised at that time as to whether or not we had discretion to count the, also giving the advice to staff, particularly the basis of the verification and sign on the provision. One of my concerns was whether or not we were setting dangerous precedent with our decision on these individual ballots that we're being asked to consider today. And while you're right, Mr. Frankel, I don't know that certificate number 1 is where the data sheets enable us to fully reconcile. I also know that they don't, those along with the interface that you have with the voters is not a really listed concern. And I would just state for the record, from my own point of view, that I don't believe this does set any precedent, that we would look into each individual case in the future with the same or the appropriate degree of investigation we thought necessary. Then vote in favor of the motion.
Thank you. Any other further comments or questions from the board? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. I anticipate at our next meeting then the results of these ballots will be here for certification. At this point, I'd like to open up, we're going to have 5 minutes of public comment from any individuals that would like to talk about the presentations we heard today or any other business that they'd like brought before the board. And I know Ray is, I have one from Ray here, a request to speak. Ray, would you like to do that?